Good morning. The tax charter promised by Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday is something that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had also spoken about in her budget. So it is a bit surprising that the Prime Minister's speech never had more details, or in fact, after the speech, it's a bit surprising that the tax department didn't come out with detailed guidelines. You know, respect for the taxpayer, for example, is something the government has been talking about in the past. But really the question, what taxpayers wanted to know was what are the penalties that are going to be used, that are going to be imposed upon taxmen who don't quote unquote respect them, who harass them, who give them tax demands that make no sense. Just to cite one number, in FY19 for example, the total disputed taxes that we had were about 10 lakh crores. Now roughly half or 55% of this were 1 to 2 years old. So why are so many new cases coming up even now, which are basically disputed? So it means that these are cases where the queries raised by the taxman are probably not correct. You see, because there is always the possibility that these are genuine disputes and the taxman is right. But keep in mind that the taxman's ability to win cases is just about 30 to 35%. So it is a fair assumption then to say that about 65 to 70% of the tax demands raised are frivolous. So surely there has to be some kind of penalty that the government plans to impose upon these taxmen. In fact, if you look at over the last several years, over the last 5-6 years or more, the tax disputes, the amount of money raised, in tax disputes is rising faster than tax collection themselves. So, ideally what you should have is you should have some kind of a tax ombudsman who should be appointed right now. And every year that tax ombudsman should present a report to Parliament. So that report could have, for example, details of tax arrears that have not been paid for more than a month. It could have details of cases which are frivolous cases that were filed. I remember some years ago the CAG had done a report. Rajiv Maharishi, who used to be the finance secretary, then became the CAG, and he did a report on how SBI in one quarter, I think at the end of the year around March, was given a tax demand of 10,000 crore. That tax demand was completely frivolous, but it was essentially imposed in order so that the Bombay Collectorate could make up its tax collections. And on April 1 or April 2, the money was refunded. In fact, I remember at that year, the CAG report under Rajiv Maharishi had said that about 10% of the corporate tax collections in the Bombay division were essentially inflated claims. So, so the government of India, the finance ministry, the Prime Minister, they need to have very clear guidelines and rules as to what are the penalties that are going to be imposed, whether it is fines, whether it is, cutting their salaries, or whether it is outright dismissal. What are the fines that are going to be imposed for taxmen who continue to get it wrong? If that doesn't happen, frankly speaking, the tax charter is a waste of time. Baseless assessment that the Prime Minister has talked about is a very clear winner. It's a very clear winner for the taxman also, because essentially what happens is right now, if companies are trying to indulge in tax theft and then through the chartered accountant they would pay some money to the taxman to get a favorable verdict. Now in this case, they don't know who the assessing officer is going to be. So that nexus between the CA, the company and the taxman will go. In fact, even when it comes to the appeal, they will not know where the appeal is going. So even that is going to be, so that is a very, very good move. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge initially for people to get used to it, but I think in the long run, that is a very good system. The big change that needs to be done though is that if there is a problem with your tax assessment, if you dispute it, the process of dispute resolution has to be much faster than it is today. So the Kar Vivad scheme, for example, which the government had introduced earlier on, that is going to do very well. But you need to have a scheme like that, or you need to have a window like that available 24/7. While the Supreme Court has done well to allow Vedanta to carry on its arbitration against the government of India for not allowing it to completely buy Hindustan Zinc, the important thing is not that the Supreme Court has allowed the arbitration to continue. The important thing, which is very worrying, is that this case goes back to 2002. So this case has been dragging for almost 20 years. When the arbitration ruling comes in, assuming it goes in favor of Vedanta, there is no guarantee that the government of India will actually accept it, because in the past In most cases, the government, whether it's this one or the previous one, in most cases, the government do not accept arbitration rulings. That's point number one. Point number two is, what does it say about doing business in India when a decision taken by one government is not honored by the next government? So in this case, when Hindustan Zinc was sold to Anil Agarwal, he was given a call option, and unfortunately, by the time he wanted to exercise that call option, the Vajpayee government had fallen, the UPA government was in power, and the UPA government said, I'm sorry, but we are not going to implement this law. We are not going to allow this to be implemented. So, we need to really think about it. The Supreme Court has done the right thing in this case, but 20 years for a case and we still haven't heard the end of it. This is positively a frightening state of affairs to be in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be launching the National Digital Health Mission. So there will be personal health records. He's going to be doing this tomorrow. Now, our lead column today actually explains why, if implemented correctly, this could be a game changer. In fact, this could be something like UPI. So, in April 2016, when the UPI began, few even thought about it as a serious contender. Today, UPI transfers have beaten debit and credit card transfers hollow. In fact, just last month, 290,000 crore rupees was transferred between people using UPI. So the National Health Mission has the potential of UPI to completely transform India's health sector. So you will of course have, for example, you will have your doctor's records, your diagnostics, your CAT scans, your MRIs, even your blood reports. All of these will be available on a DigiLocker kind of depository or repository that you will have on the cloud, so you can show your health records to doctors anywhere in the world. More important, when the processing now becomes electronic, it becomes a lot cheaper for the insurance companies. Once there's a lot more data, there's a lot more ability to use AI to get more diagnostics, to do fraud control. So this is, this is potentially a big, this is a game changer. And more important, if you look at the advances taking place in telemedicine, it is also going to be possible over a period of, maybe 1 to 2 years, depending on how fast the apps and all come in. It is going to be possible to do a lot of telemedicine, and a lot of people who come to the big city hospitals from rural areas or smaller towns, they don't need to do it anymore. You can actually do a lot of the work that you do in the big city hospital with the correct protocols being taught. This can be done in the rural areas or semi-urban areas as well. So this is a great move to look forward to, and happy Independence Day in advance.